Hey Zoology. So this is Mrs. Knowles, and we are just going to do a quick little introduction to the phylum Chordata. And I just want to show you how diverse this phylum is and how for the rest of our semester we are going to be talking about it. And so what we're going to do today is you're going to take notes specifically over the subphylum Urochordata and the subphylum Cephalochordata. And weirdly enough, these animals in this, which you might have listened to in a podcast, they are invertebrates that are chordates. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. Then also in the phylum Chordata, we call up the group Craniata. And within this group, there are two other subphylums, subphylum Hyperotreti, which we're going to talk a little bit about next week, and also subphylum Vertebrata, which is where you live, and that's the subphylum you're in. Okay, so today we're just going to talk about the first two, and that's what you need to bring to class with notes about. So here we go. So subphylum Urochordata, which again, at this point, we should know the tail means Euro, and you just had a vocab quiz that means chordate. Chordata means cord. And when we talk about the cord, we're basically talking about the nerve cord. That makes them very, very part of this phylum. So within the subphylum Urochordata, or the tail cords, we basically find these really bizarre creatures called tunicates or sea squirts. These words are used interchangeably. And these are a picture of them, and if you look at them, they look kind of like a sponge, but they're not. The word tunicate is named for the tough tunic that surrounds the adult, which I'll show you here in just a second. And again, what I really need you to write down throughout our presentation is if it's in red, you definitely want to get that down. So make sure you get subphylum Urochordata and anything in red from this point on about this subphylum. So what you should be writing down then, in the subphylum Urochordata, sea squirts or tunicates, when they are adults, basically they live in marine environments, so they're living in the ocean. They're sessile, which means they stick themselves, they're immobile, they stick themselves usually to some type of rock, and they're filter-feeding organisms that live either solitary or in colonies, okay? There is about 3,000-ish species of these animals on the planet in our oceans, all right? So make sure you get everything that's in red down. All right, moving on. So let me just kind of show you some of these structures specifically. So if you are a tunicate or a sea squirt, this is kind of what you look like. The two things that I would want you to write down here is that they do have something called an oral siphon, which is the inlet for water and kind of acts as its mouth. So water and food moves here in the animal. And then the second, or atrial siphon, is the opening for the excurrent water, and so water would move out, okay? And that's what all tunicates or sea squirts have, are these two different types of siphons. We want to make sure we get that down. We're just kind of describing the structures of these bizarre creatures. And then we already kind of said this, but just make sure you know that their body wall is this connective tissue covering, and it's called a tunic, hence why that we call them the tunicates. And it appears gel-like, but it's actually really tough. And so I'll show you a picture of that. When you come back to class, the next time I see you, I am going to show you a couple of these videos to do a quick review. But please make sure you have these notes because we are going to be doing an activity with them. All right? All right, so here is a real tunicate and a picture of a diagram of one. And so a lot of times, like, I don't know if you remember sponges. You might be like, oh my God, that looks like a sponge, but it's not, okay? And I'm going to tell you why, because these are pretty complex animals. They're actually very much related to you, even though they don't really have a lot of cephalization going on. So those are those incurrent and excurrent siphons that we just got done talking about. This is going towards their mouth. This is kind of getting rid of water. But then look down below here, and you can see here, or better in the diagram, these animals actually have these, they keep these pharyngeal slits, okay? They have an anus, intestines, an esophagus, and a stomach, so that's the digestive system that they have. They also have an atrium, which is part of a cardiovascular system, a very primitive one, but definitely one. So definitely not a sponge, definitely not a sponge. Then that tunic is this clear stuff here on the outside that kind of protects the organism made up of connective tissue, which in your body, you have a lot of connective tissue kind of holding you together, okay? Not like this, but we do have connective tissues. So that's just what a tunicate looks like. They are bizarre chordates for sure. The last thing we probably want to write down about being in the Urochordata is like, well, how are they a chordate if they don't have those 4 characteristics? Well, when they are a tadpole larvae, so when they look like this, when they are first hatching out of their egg, they possess all 4 chordate characteristics. And so this is something you might want to go over one more time, kind of refer back to other notes that we've taken. What are those 4 chordate characteristics? You will always need to know that. They possess them when they're a tadpole larvae, and then as they develop into an adult, they lose them. And that's really indicative of lots of different types of chordates. You just have to have those 4 characteristics at some point in your life. You don't have to keep them throughout your life, but you have to have them at some point. And for them, it's mainly their larval stage. All right. The second subphylum that we're going to look at today then, and that we'll be reviewing the next time we see each other, is called the subphylum Cephalochordata. And again, both of these terms, you should know that the word cephalo means head, and once again, chordata means cord. And this is what these animals look like. They have a little bit more of an animal look to them, right? They're specifically called lancelets. And there is about 30 living species here today. Some of them living in like North America in our oceans. Again, also in our oceans. Just FYI, you're going to see this in pictures, but they're tad-like animals that are literally flattened. They can be transparent, so we're going to show you some pictures. But what I would write down is their name. They're called the head chords because their notochord extends from their tail to their head, kind of in the opposite direction. All right. When you come back to class, I will show you a little video of one. A common name for a lancelet is called Amphioxus. And so we'll show you some videos there. All right. So basically, Amphioxus is interesting because, so lancelets are interesting because, here's what I'd write down. They display the 4 basic chordate characteristics throughout their entire life. They hold on to all 4. Okay, so let's definitely write that down. Here's another one, another type of lancelet. So one more time, they have 4 of the basic chordate characteristics, and they maintain it throughout their life. So again, can you remember what those 4 are? Hopefully, like there are 4 little things popping into your head right now. Here they are. So here's what a lancelet looks like. So the 4 things, 4 chordate characteristics, one last time, would be their pharyngeal slits. They maintain those throughout their entire life. Their postanal tail, so there's their anus, so it goes past it. They maintain that throughout their lives. Their notochord, which starts from their tail and goes to their head, kind of like a coat hanger of sorts. And then their dorsal nerve cord, which is really what makes, again, a chordate is on the most dorsal part of their body. So throughout their life, they have all 4 of these. They have all 4. Obviously, there's nothing read here, so I think we're good. If you just want to read through it, there's some very interesting things about how they digest and stuff, but nothing that I'm really going to test you on. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. And then when you come back to class, we're going to talk about some evolutionary relationships. I'll just show you a quick little video about what it means to really be a chordate and how these 2 invertebrate subphylums are definitely chordates because of those characteristics, but they're weird because they are invertebrates, okay? So the last thing, just FYI, all chordates look the same at some point in their development. And we're talking about all vertebrate chordates. I don't know if you know what this thing is. This used to be you. This would be a human embryo. or fetus there. So you can see it has all 4. And again, kind of like most chordates, we start off with 4 and then we kind of lose them in our lives, not all of them, or some of them become other things. And that's some stuff that we will be talking about. For example, these are all vertebrates, subphylum Vertebrata, that we'll look at. So I'm just kind of giving you like a nice little preview. But this is what we're going to be doing the rest of our semester. We're going to be talking about the subphylum Vertebrata once we get done talking about the invertebrates. And so you can see, like, if I just showed you these embryos, I think it'd be almost impossible to tell which one's going to become the chicken, the human, the salamander, or the fish, right? Because they all kind of look the same. And then as they develop into a fetus, then they start taking on their actual characteristics and look, all right? And then the last thing is, I just need you to appreciate that chordates are really diverse, and that's why we're going to spend the rest of our time looking at them. Those non-invertebrate chordates in the subphylum Urochordata and Cephalochordata, they do make up about 4% of all chordates, so they're in a pretty low number, whereas the fishes make up about half of vertebrate chordates that are out there in the world. There are lots of fish, and that does make sense. That's going to be our first major class that we're going to look at, just because, I mean, if you think of Earth, there's a lot of water, fresh water, and lots of salt water, and that's where all the fishes live. And then these are the other classes that we get to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about mammals at the very end, birds, reptiles, and amphibians, and you can just kind of see the breakdown. I know everyone loves mammals and they're adorable, but they really do not make up a huge percentage in the chordate phylum, okay? All right, I hope you got some good notes. We're going to do something with those notes in an activity the next time I see you, so you can always replay this if you need to. I will be talking to you soon. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.